with everyone. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for dialing in early. If you are here for Facilitation Week and are interested in tech hosting, you are in the right place. And I'd like to invite you right now to choose your own adventure. And so what do I mean by that? And I like to start out with a really quick welcome slide. And I'd love for you to just quickly in the chat, maybe type, what's your favorite hype song? What is one of the things in your life that you are currently appreciative of right now? And this isn't, you don't have to do all of these. It can be or what successes have you recently had in your work as a tech host or in your area of expertise? And all this does is it helps me realize as a tech host, does everyone have access to the chat, right? And if you are dialing in on a phone or a mobile device of any kind and you don't have access to the chat, don't worry about it. You're welcome to unmute if you have any timely, relevant questions, but I will ask folks to keep themselves muted so we have a nice, clean recording. All right, so I'll make this a little bit bigger again so you can see it. Would love to see your favorite hype song. What's one thing in your life that you're currently appreciative right now? And what successes have you recently had in your work? I love to celebrate wins. So feel free to put those in the chat. And the reason why I ask about hype songs, favorite hype songs, is that I love creating song lists for my clients as a tech host. And if I know what songs people like, sometimes I'll ask the presenter or I'll ask some of the participants. I'll play those songs during breaks. And then sometimes we can create our own playlist I can share out with everyone. So a hype song is the song that really gets you excited, could get you excited before you're presenting or teaching or just gets you hyped up. Excellent question. Yeah, celebrate good times is a good one. Good, and share those wins as well. So Avani is appreciative of and getting recognized for fairly engaging virtual sessions. That's wonderful. Well, we're going to have a little bit of interaction today, so we'd love to also harvest some great knowledge from you too as well. Isha is saying, I appreciate being able to have pets again. Oh, wonderful. Barb's saying, I appreciate that we in Calgary, Canada, have a beautiful and warm fall, no snow yet. And Paul, like Stairway to Heaven, life, getting some interest in my online workshops and shared whiteboards with participants. That's great. Excellent. I love seeing those in the chat. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me today for Tech Hosting E3, your online sessions. My name is Heather Leavitt Martinez, and I'm the director at Tech Host Academy, and I'm excited to share with you a topic that I'm passionate about, and I want to learn a few things from you. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to our tech host, Mary. So Mary, if you could just give us a big wave there, you should be able to see Mary either at the top or at the side of your screen, however you have it configured. Mary is a recent graduate of Tech Host Academy, and I'm excited that she's here today supporting me in this presentation. You are welcome to private message Mary if you have any technical issues. Now, I'm not going to assume, because many of you are facilitators and probably really great at online meetings, that we won't have technical issues, because if you're like me, I learn something new every single time I come into an online session. Now, if we have time, I will invite you to participate in a breakout. We'll be using some interactive tools in Zoom and third-party collaboration tools. And while I will make time at the end to take questions, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and please be sure to start your question with 3 question marks. I'm just setting some etiquette here, and set the 2 to everyone. And I say that because a basic rule of group dynamics is if one person has a question, then chances are others likely have similar questions, and we can all gain by seeing one another's questions and hearing those answers. And so to be able to put those 3 question marks in the chat and then ask your question, and I'll demonstrate that here. There we go. Then that helps me to quickly visualize and quickly see what is talk between all of you and what's an actual question that's being asked. And yes, hope the video will be shared. So after this session, I'll do just a little bit of post-production and I'll pop it up on YouTube. It'll probably be an unlisted because all of you have registered for this right now. And then I'll follow up with an email. Exactly. All right. Also, if you have questions, feel free to raise your digital or your real hand. I can't see everybody right now, but I will ask Mary to moderate. Mary, if you could be looking for hands, then she could moderate for us and say so-and-so has a question. And also, you're welcome to unmute if you have timely, relevant questions. Okay. So any questions before we begin? All right. So I would love to learn where in the world you are dialing in from. And so what I'm going to do, and sometimes I usually don't say, hey, I'm going to share my screen, but I am going to share my screen because I'm going to invite you to annotate with me. So what does that mean? Well, right now at the top of your screen, if you're dialing in on a computer, chances are it says that you see my screen and there's some view options. You can click view options and go to the annotate tool. And when you do that, a little toolbox will show up. And if you can click that stamp tool, you can choose any one of those stamps and then put a star, heart, or check wherever you're dialing in from. And if you're dialing in on a mobile device or you don't have the ability to annotate, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat and we'll stamp that for you. Wonderful. I like seeing this filled up. And I'm honored to live and work on Turtle Island and specifically the lands of the Ute, Pueblo, and Anasazi elders, past, present, and future, here in Southwest Colorado. And I love having a visual of people dialing in from all over the world. It helps us appreciate that we are more than just faces on our screen. And while this map is flat, I just want to remind everyone that when our feet are flat on the floor, we can imagine a line from our feet to the center of the earth. And that is something we can all connect with. So great. We've got someone in London. So I'm going to grab the stamp tool and do my best to put something in there. We've got Michigan and Florida. Great. India, and it's midnight. Thank you so much for being here. Wonderful. And I just love having this visual. Again, we can see where everyone from around the world is here. So I'm going to take a quick screenshot of this because I love to just have a something recognizable of what we've done here. And I'm going to clear this off. So just hold all of your stamping for now. And I'm also curious where or who is in the room. And I'm curious, are you a visual practitioner? Are you a facilitator, a trainer? Maybe you're already a tech host. Maybe it's something else. And again, feel free to either share that in the chat or again, you can use your stamp tool here to stamp out where you live. And you can live in one or more of these areas. Great. Someone's a facilitator and trainer. Someone's a tech host, trainer, facilitator. Great. I love it. I feel like I'm amongst friends. Trainer moving towards facilitation. Some of us are sort of in the middle. This is great. And again, another visual way that we can see who is in the room. And it helps me as the speaker or as the tech host to see who's in the room and who am I speaking to and who are we serving. Great. And I love design strategy. Would love to talk more about that too, Natalie, at the end of the call. Great. We've got mediator, conference director, tech help, would-be facilitator. Wonderful. All right. So I'm going to take a quick snapshot of this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for participating. I just love to be able to see who's in the room. And so I just want to let you know that when the opportunity to submit a proposal for Facilitation Week hosted by the IAF came across my desk, I reflected on what would be my best contribution pulling from my body of work. So I don't want to give you a big bio, but I just want to let you know that in addition to being the director at Tech Host Academy, I'm also a certified appreciative inquiry facilitator. So some of you might be familiar with that work. And I teach a class at the Center for Appreciative Inquiry called AI plus visuals meeting design. So that'll give you kind of a flavor of how I work. And I'm also a visual practitioner, and I teach lettering to other visual practitioners, facilitators, trainers at Let's Letter Together. And so, why are we here today? So, our purpose is to learn about E3ing your online sessions using the 3 pillars of tech hosting and how to measure your tech hosting aptitude. And how we're going to do that is by, well, we've already figured out who is in the room, but I'm going to define what tech hosting is, and I'll give you a lesson about E3ing, what that means, your online meetings, and how to measure your tech hosting aptitude. Then I'll open it up to Q&A, and then we'll have a quick wrap up. And so, what do I hope that you get out of today? Well, I hope that you can leave with some tips for practical application and better understanding of tech hosting as a complementary or a standalone skill set. We've got folks that have decided that that's all they want to do is tech hosting, and others who just a little bit more of these tech hosting skills can help them in their everyday job. So, what does E3ing your online sessions, or E to the third power, mean? Well, the 3 E's stand for engaging, efficient, and equitable meetings. About a year ago, I'll tell you a little bit about where these 3 words came from for me. I was invited to a discovery meeting by a client who wanted me to train employees how to make their meetings more productive. And as facilitators, I bet you all have had those types of requests. They need help with agenda design, meeting activities, and how to efficiently use third-party collaboration tools and more. And during the conversation, they also mentioned that they had issues with participation, burnout, wanted to encourage team building. And while they started out saying that they wanted sessions to be more productive, they naturally started to look at all of the problems. And as an appreciative inquiry facilitator, I quickly turned the conversation by inquiring about the strengths and successes of the group. Rather than focusing on those problems, I focused on the results, or in what we call an appreciative inquiry, desired outcomes. And then I presented them with this Venn diagram. Giving them this visual helped them see that what they wanted and the combined benefits of their desires. So by focusing on participation and team building, we can increase engagement that um, that kind of effort can foster culture. And by combining team building and productivity, co-creation is encouraged and can build momentum and trust. And over time, with increased participation, engagement, and productivity, teams can be and find more ways to be efficient. And after validating and applying this approach with a few more clients, and after hundreds of meetings, I've learned that the common denominator for meetings were the 3 E's, right? Engagement, efficiency, and making things more equitable. And so while tech hosts may not be leading or presenting, knowing, or while tech, think about it from the tech host point of view. I know a lot of you are facilitators. While they may not be leading or presenting, and knowing the purpose and the agenda and the desired outcomes of the online session, tech hosts can support and potentially become trusted advisors on their experience of being in so many meetings. So I've been doing a lot of talking. But I want to ask you, what is tech hosting? I'd love to hear from you what you think tech hosting is. So please feel free to unmute or type what tech hosting means to you in the chat. Did you see what I did there with my glass? Many of you probably know this, but we in the biz, I like to say it, we in the biz do a 2-sip pause whenever we ask a question so that folks can have time to answer. I love what we're seeing in the chat. Using the right tech to achieve group session outcomes. That's absolutely right. Active demos. Lori likes to think of this as making the trainer facilitators' dreams come true. That's a great dream question to ask if you practice appreciative inquiry. What can I do to help you make your dreams come true? Before we start a session, one of the very last questions I ask a presenter or a facilitator is, as the tech host, what can I do to support you better in this session? Or what else can I do to support you to make this successful? Excellent. Keeping people engaged and focused. Tech hosting means hosting meetings with faculty or facility in useful tech that can help groups achieve their meeting goals. Co-designing with Facilitator to help the participants gain the best experience. I love that. And facilitating the meeting, fostering interaction between in-person and remote participants. And that's true. I offer a session where I talk about teams and all the different roles that we have. And a tech host can be one person. And that's all they do is tech hosting, or tech hosting can be in addition to that. And so I love that I'm in a room where we're all talking about it, because I feel like I'm constantly saying how important tech hosting is. And a lot of people don't know what it is. So I'm so glad that many of you are able to define it and help me define it as well. So Brian Tarallo, our resident expert at Tech Host Academy and award-winning author of this book called The Surviving the Horror of Online Meetings, defines tech hosting in this way. The tech host manages the virtual space for the online meeting. The responsibilities include providing preparatory videos and startup guides in advance of the event, orienting participants to the technology platforms, managing online content, and troubleshooting with participants as the need arises. Now, for me, a tech host is someone who is a trusted partner who supports the design and delivery of an online session. So while Brian defines the what, I define the who. And at Tech Host Academy, where we both work, I give you the tools to discover your why and how to be a professional tech host. So I'd love, if you don't mind, Mary, if you could put my definition in the chat as well. I'd appreciate that. And I love how all of you are also defining it. Yeah. All right. Great. So why is tech hosting important? I think that's why we're all here, right? So for those hired to facilitate, you know the importance of being service-minded. And can you spin all the plates at once? And I would say sometimes. I know I think I can, but it just takes one too many pieces of technology or platforms or people in the room to remind me that we probably should have hired a tech host. So knowing your capabilities and capacity is key. And so we're going to cover the 3 pillars of tech hosting aptitude and how you can assess where you are. But first, I want to talk a little bit about appreciative inquiry, because to me, it's so very important. So I'd love to see, by either raising your physical or digital hands, please let me know if you know what tech or what appreciative inquiry is, or if you practice it in some way. You could be a certified facilitator. I love it. We're seeing a lot here. Use it in your own facilitation or practice the principles. Awesome. So we are in great company. So appreciative inquiry, as you know, allows us to discover and live into what could be. We live in a world our questions create. And as an appreciative inquiry practitioner, we focus on the strengths and successes of people and teams, their accomplishments, and what gives them life and helps them thrive. We also do so by asking unconditionally positive questions. If you are an appreciative inquiry person, what might be an unconditional positive question that you can ask as a tech host? Feel free to put those in the chat. Yep. So the question is what as an appreciative inquiry person, if you are, what might be an unconditional positive question that you could ask your client, maybe your presenter or facilitator? What unconditional positive question can you ask as a tech host? Thank you, Mary. So some examples that I would include are, what does success look like? How do we want to feel when we reach our goal or by the end of the meeting? Or how will we know when we are living our purpose? Love it. Paul's saying, what tech do you like and why, and why maybe it makes and why makes it work for you? Yeah, so it's really helpful to ask a client what technology they're using, because some groups are not that tech savvy and some are really, really tech savvy. So you'd hate to throw them into the deep end of the pool if they're not ready for it, or give them something too basic that may not fit their needs. Yeah, what are the desired outcomes? Exactly. That's the basis of our discovery meeting, isn't it? Excellent. Well, the approach, design, and curriculum that I teach is based on appreciative inquiry, and it allows us to visualize and live into what's possible. So now that we have really set the foundation here, and for the lifelong learners and the service-minded in the group, tech hosting gives you another vehicle in which to deliver and contribute great work. And I just love this quote by Anne Frank. How wonderful is it that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world? So now that we're here, how are we doing? Do we need to take a break, or can we still plug along? I think we're looking pretty good. All right. Excellent. Okay, so what I want to cover now are I'm going to just give you some ideas, planting some seeds here. 9 ways to make your online sessions, this is the E3ing part, engaging, efficient, and equitable. So I want to give you a sneak peek into how we've been E3ing our online sessions as tech hosts. In last month's Q&A call, we dove deep into E3ing our meetings, and we used a mural as a way to harvest the knowledge in the room. And so I want to share some 3 tips for each one of the E's. And so the first one is engaging. So I think it's very important to give a warm welcome when people are coming in. And as people are dialing in, usually their audio isn't totally set up yet, but they can see you, and video is very important and powerful. So while they may not be able to hear you yet, a smiling face is nice to see, or waving. If you can just wave. And it's pretty incredible. If I'm waving just at everyone, some people feels like, oh, she's waving at me, and they wave back. And so just giving that warm welcome is really important before their audio is connected. I also like to engage sometimes in a visual icebreaker to help people become more familiar with the tech. So you'll remember I showed you that map, and we used the annotation tool and the chat to be able to share where we're dialing in from. And you'll want to make it it's what it is it's really just a quick win by using the chat or a learning opportunity when introducing a third-party collaboration tool. It's also, in terms of engagement, important to design for different types of learners. So be sure there are times that participants can share verbally, they can write, or they can interact in small pairs or groups and move around. This also helps meetings become more equitable. And so here are 3 tips on making meetings more efficient. So you may want to offer a tech check session. Sometimes we find ourselves working with a group that has varying degrees of tech savviness. Tech check sessions are a great way to get everyone using the tech efficiently. Sometimes the focus is on building confidence for online learners, introducing third-party collaboration tools for working meetings, or simply a sandboxing session for working groups or for onboarding purposes. So I'd love to see another show of hands. Who's using tech check sessions in their work now? Does anybody use that term, or trying that out? No? All right. So let me tell you a little bit of what that might look like. So when I'm doing a tech check session, it's really, again, based on the needs of the group. If I'm working with remote workers or people that are working in a hybrid situation, we will meet well before the actual meeting. So not like 15 minutes before, because if you fill everybody's head with all this technical information, it can get a little bit daunting. It can be too much information before you're actually doing the work. And so sometimes it's a half an hour to an hour. I don't like going over an hour because, again, if we're talking about tech, it's a bit much all at once. For creative groups, social groups, or groups that may not always spend a lot of time working online, so their tech savviness may not be as high as those who are online all the time, I'll do a tech check session to help them get familiar with Zoom, to set some etiquette around how we're going to use the chat, how breakout rooms work, and how they might be interacting with each other when we do go to the meeting. And those are wonderful ways not only to get to know people, but as a tech host, if you're tech hosting a group of creatives or folks that are getting together in a social arena, you're building a trust with them before you actually get in the room. And by doing that well before the meeting, I usually do it 2 days before the meeting for a couple of reasons. Not everybody shows up. It gives them a little bit of time to watch the video. And the other reason is if they are having any technical issues. So I go through the 5 vitals of I check 5 vitals, okay? And one of them is internet speed. And if their internet speed is really low, usually a couple of days usually gives them time to contact their internet service provider and get the speed up again. And so those are some examples of some tech check sessions that I offer. Anybody else have any questions about tech checks? Yeah. Do you record the tech check session for those who couldn't attend? Yes. So I'll record it for those who couldn't attend. And then I will share out the link if it's on Zoom, or if it's sometimes for some groups, they want me to conduct a tech check session that they can use as part of their onboarding. And so I may upload that to an unlisted YouTube and send them that unlisted link so that it has a place to live forever, or just pass it off to them if they want to hold that in their own repository. Excellent question. Thank you, Lisa. Any other questions about tech check sessions or anything I've covered so far around engagement or efficiency? So I love tech check sessions. It's a way for me to get to know folks. It's also for some groups, I can also kind of tell if it's not a really big group, I can kind of tell where people are in terms of tech savviness. And if someone's having trouble with their anything, audio or dialing in, or if they're using a mobile device and they're not quite sure how to use the chat and that kind of thing, I might just highlight them on a spreadsheet and check and see and just be in tune with where they are. I might even move their video closer to the top so I can keep an eye on them as I'm tech hosting. That's just sort of a logistics thing. Now, at the beginning of the techs, or at the beginning of sessions, I like to set the tone and etiquette about when and how to communicate. So when to speak or ask questions in the chat, I like to say, unmute to ask timely, relevant questions. I usually slow down and emphasize timely and relevant there. And I have a set of easy to remember protocols when using the chat. Like I showed before, typing 3 question marks in front of your question in the chat helps me see. So I am reading the chat and it's not too busy here, but if you can, for those of you who just dialed in, if you have a question, please type 3 question marks in front of it, and that allows me to see which ones are questions. And then I also, again, like to remind folks that if you have any technical issues, please direct message the tech host. If I'm presenting and I see a direct message, it's that little red, uh, it turns red in my chat and it's kind of an alert, which is another great visual tool. But again, I like everybody to be able to see the questions because we could build on those questions. So that's why I think that's important. So, what type of chat etiquette do you commonly practice? Does anybody else, have you heard of the 3 question marks, or do you use something else? I'd love for you to share that in the chat. All right, Lisa's saying put on your video when asking a question or making a comment if possible. Yes, I like to invite people to turn on their videos to create a sense of community and an authentic environment. But we understand if you're having bandwidth issues, if you're traveling, if you're eating, or if you're taking care of someone, that you may not want to show your video. But I do believe that it's important, especially when we're sharing, so we can see who's talking, right? Great. Get folks to type their name to show that they know how to use the chat. Yes, exactly. Good. That's why a lot of people say, put in the chat where you're dialing in from. And it's wonderful to see that chat storm happening and we get to see all the different places people are dialing in from. Yep. Katie says that she was hosting once and someone was yawning fiercely. What would you do? Was yawning. What would I do? I'd probably yawn because I hear that yawns are infectious, right? If I knew the person, I might private message them and say, hey, what's going on? Are you tired or is this boring? Kind of keep them engaged again. But I think there's not I don't think I would call them out publicly, not in front of everybody. I wouldn't say anything there. But yeah, this is great. All right. So I base the tone and etiquette on what I learn when I'm talking about in the beginning in terms of turning on your cameras or how we're going to use the chat. Maybe we're going to ask questions throughout and the tech host is going to moderate, or letting people know, save all of your questions until the end. I've had some presenters that like to do that. It's more of a presentation style. And so I base all of that tone and etiquette that I share on what I learn from the client and the presenter in the discovery meeting. And then my last tip for efficiency is to create 3 top tips when transitioning into third-party tools. So you want to make them easy to remember and the reason that it benefits them. And repeat the directions in the chat just in case participants didn't hear or missed it. This helps both also with engagement, but also helps with efficiency so that people don't have to unmute and ask. And then finally, to make meetings more equitable, I like to send a quick guide for how to use third-party collaboration tools that includes a video and practice page to accommodate different learning styles and levels of tech savviness. And this can help with efficiency too. So if you don't mind, Mary, could you put the link in the chat to the mural quick guide? So I have a quick guide that I wrote, and it's all about mural, and it also includes a video and a practice page. And this is something that you're welcome to check out. And if you feel like it's helpful, go ahead and pass that on to clients. If you use mural, that's specific for that particular one. We got it. All right. So again, feel free to share
No.
that. That's all right. No worries. So here's a little behind the scenes of what's happening. I have a flow document in Google that we're sharing, and sometimes it's really easy just to copy and paste. But if you have a live link in, say, in a Google Doc, you can click it, and a little window will pop up, and there's a little icon there that says "Copy Link," and that's the one you want to use when you copy it over into the chat. And remember, at making sure that that HTTPS before your actual link will make it live so that other people can click on it. Excellent. Great. And again, feel free to download this. It's all yours to use, and you can share it with clients as well. Another thing that I like to do to make sure that sessions are equitable is to ensure that live transcript is enabled and closed captions are edited for clarity when people are speaking off of Spotlight. So what do I mean by that? Of course, right now, if you wanted to look at the closed caption, you can go to the bottom of your screen or where it says more and show subtitles. That's also a place where you can turn it off. I like to show people both of that because sometimes if you're on the computer, you don't want that taking up the space if you don't need it. If you're on a mobile device, sometimes it covers the whole screen, and so you would go into settings and turn that off. But I also feel that it's important that, especially if you are teaching, so this may or may not fall on the tech host side, whoever's doing the post production and sharing out the recording. You can turn on closed captions in Zoom, but if you're downloading the video and you're doing some post production and then uploading it somewhere, to include those closed captions as an option. And it's important not just to download that VTT file that's in Zoom. I don't even use that. I actually run it through a closed caption app called Otter AI. And I go in, and if any time there is a switch in the speaker, you want to put in brackets who that speaker is, especially if they're speaking off camera. So if you hear someone speaking and the speaker's lips aren't moving, you'd want to put in, participant. Even if you don't know their name, that's fine. It just shows that the person that's reading the captions, that there's another speaker speaking at that time. So that's another way to make things equitable. Also, as a tech host, and this is important for facilitators too, is listen for those hidden gems and look for the dim views. So what do I mean by that? If I were to look now at everyone that's on the screen, so far everyone's pretty well lit on their faces, right? But you really want to ensure that everyone has a voice and notice what's happening in the group dynamics. So, who is being listened to? As tech hosts, we can recommend people have better lighting and invite them to turn their cameras on to create that space of authenticity and community. And I hate to break this to you, and many of you probably already know this, but there is this unconscious bias against those who have really dim lighting, especially if it's backlit here. It may make their face really dark or you can't see them very well. There's this unconscious bias against those who have this dim lighting or that don't have their camera on, that their voices and contributions are minimized and maybe not as important. Yeah. Um, could I put the names of the closed caption tool in the chat? Oh, sure. Absolutely. So the one that I use, it's Otter AI. There you go. So that's what I use. Great. And I wouldn't call people out if I noticed that they had a really dark um, or dim lighting or anything like that. I wouldn't necessarily call them out. But if you do have a tech check session, that's a great time to say, hey, let's check your lighting, because you're already checking their audio, their video, their internet. Lighting is a big piece of that too. Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about other ways we can make our meetings more engaging, efficient, and equitable. So what I'd like to do is I'd like for us to go into breakout rooms and share in Padlet. Um, and I'll ask Mary to put in the chat great. She put in the questions. What other ways can we make our meetings more engaging, efficient, and equitable? You're welcome to type some things down, but don't bother putting them in the chat because we're going to jump over to Padlet. And let me show you what I mean by that. And I'm going to share my screen now so that you can see it. And Mary has put the Padlet link in the chat. And so a good common practice would be to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. And then I'm going to give you the link. And then we're going to go into Padlet and do that. And so, so here's what's going to happen. When you get into Padlet, you're going to see 3 different columns. And if you want to add an idea, you simply click the plus button under wherever it is you want to add how we can improve our meetings by engagement, efficient, or equitable. And then over here, you might just type the idea. And if you have any details, you can type them under it. This part here is just for folks who want to upload pictures and things like that, or links, and that'll show up right under that. So when I put you in your breakout rooms, then you can discuss those different ways we can make online sessions more engaging, efficient, and equitable as tech hosts, right? All right, so let's go ahead and click that link. Now you're going to have an opportunity here to do a little bit of screen real estate management. So to be able to see your Zoom screen and your browser, what you'll have to do is do some arranging. You might have to pull your windows in the lower right-hand corner to make them bigger or smaller. And I'm actually going to make this smaller so we just see these 3. Good. Excellent. Is everyone in Padlet? Or I should say it this way. Is anybody having trouble getting into Padlet? You'll be using Zoom as your audio, Padlet as your visual, and then soon we'll go into breakout sessions. Yeah. So any questions before we go into breakout? I want to make sure that I'm clarifying for you. And I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah.
I've got a really simple question, I hope.
Yeah.
How do you move? Oh, okay. It's finally worked. I've managed to move all the windows around. Don't worry.
Well, what happened is I stopped sharing. And so that probably changed things for you, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense.
Yeah. So I teach screen management in one of my lessons where it's how do we manage all of our screens? Because as tech hosts, we have things open like spreadsheets and browser windows and our internet, and maybe we've got mail and music, and there's so many different things going on at once. Yeah, very good. Barb, did you have a question, or was that Barb?
Not me.
You don't have, okay. All right. I saw that you were unmuted, so I wasn't sure.
Just getting ready.
All right. Getting ready. So we probably have it set up so that when you go into the breakout rooms, you'll probably already be muted. So you'll have to unmute again when you get there. But if there's no other questions, I'm going to put you in the breakout rooms for 8 minutes. And so sometimes what I like to say is during this awkward time before you get whisked away, let's just go ahead and strike pose. Yay. Welcome back. All right. Welcome back, everyone. How was that? All right. Paul's dancing.
Yeah,
he must have been in the party group. So go ahead and unmute. I'd love to hear from folks. How was that for you? Yeah, Lori.
Oh, we had fun.
Yeah, you had fun?
Yeah, we were at the party room, but we had fun.
Good to hear. And Barb?
Oh, it's amazing how the ideas just started flowing. I mean, I think a few of us went, what's this question? And then we just started sending them out. That was pretty cool.
Isn't that wonderful how the group think can just start bubbling up? Good. And Hope, how was that for you?
Yeah, it's similar to everybody. It was engaging. We had lots of ideas. They just kept flowing. At first, we were kind of a little bit stalled, and then when we started flowing, it just continued.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad to hear that. And yes, being able to see what other people are writing while you're in the Padlet. Now, I am going to share this again so that we can see. Oops, I don't know what I'm sharing. There we go. Sorry about that. I had too many windows open all at once. My apologies. Here we go. And so what I love about using Padlet is it's a pretty simple way to harvest a lot of information in a short amount of time. And if you're working with creative groups and they want to show pictures of things that they're doing, you get an instant gallery. It's so wonderful to be able to use this tool. And so what I love to see here is that you might be working on a post and then another person's might pop up, and that might help engage. Even though you're in separate groups, you're seeing what other people are saying. So love that. Yes, I think introducing the technology at the start of the session is important. And in less than 5 minutes, very important, fun and engaging. That's where I like to do some of my check-ins, having people move things around. Using written and visual instructions on paper and hold up to the camera. Yes, keep things low tech for low tech groups. Really getting a sense of where the group is, I think, is very important. Don't do PowerPoint by death. Oh, that's why I use a Prezi video. You might have seen I was using some of my visuals were showing up on the side, only because I want me and you to have a connection over this flat screen of text, right? Definitely helps with different types of learners. I think it's important for people to show their work as well. Yeah. And the chat is really another pretty low tech way of sharing information and movement. So can someone say more about movement? I don't know who typed that, but anyone's welcome to say more about movement.
Okay, having them engage in different physical activities during the
Yeah, so
session, or somebody can
excellent.
initiate an activity. Yeah.
Yes. So when would you do that normally?
It can be an icebreaker. It can be an energizer at a point when you
Mhm.
think the energy is waning. You know,
Excellent.
it right. And it can also be something to demonstrate an idea, you know.
Yes, I love that. So for me, what I like to do is, as the tech host, I like to watch people during the break. And if they didn't move, especially if it's a long day, and we can do this right now. Actually, I'd ask everybody, if you're not already standing, because some of you might have some standing desks, if you would just stand. And what you can do to just get the blood flowing in your body is, let's move the biggest muscles in our body. And I like to do leg lifts if you can. If you can't, if you're not capable of doing it, that's totally okay. But this gets the blood flowing. The largest muscles in our bodies are in our backside and our legs. Another thing that's really fun to do, especially if people have mobility issues, is just shake it out. And so I might shake out one arm and I'll count it down. We'll do 3 for each limb and go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 2, 2, 2, 2, and then
Right.
1, 1, 1, 1. And you can even do that sitting down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so already, if you don't already feel it, I mean, I already feel a little bit more energized physically.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, who's ready to work out? And it doesn't take very long.
No.
I usually do mine after the break. Excellent. Thank you so much, Hope.
You're
Great.
welcome.
So yeah, so having music to energize meeting, that's great. And calm music, very good. Yep, interactive activities. What are some other interactive activities that we could use to help make our meetings more engaging?
You can actually use movement. So you can ask people questions like, I don't know, a yes or no question. And people who say yes can sit down, can remain sitting, and the people who say no, stand up. You know, you can use Slido, Mentimeter. There's lots of like online tools. Somebody mentioned in our group a swivelly wheel thing.
Nice, very good. Jamboard. Has anybody heard of Path Space?
No.
Seeing some nods, no. All right, if you don't mind, Mary, in the next few minutes, if you could put PathSpace, a live link of PathSpace, and I'm not, trying to sell it or anything. In fact, I think it might even be free, or it's in a free stage right now. But what PathSpace is really great at is helping take a lot of different ideas and coming to consensus quickly. I think there's like 5 steps. There's some timers involved, and it's a really fast and easy way to get to consensus. So that's really fantastic. Good. I love it. Icebreakers are wonderful. to get people. And I think icebreakers, and I like how this says this, can be focused question on discussion or something completely different to put people at ease. Yeah. So some people hate icebreakers. They're like, oh no, I have to do this thing. But what it does is it really helps people. Sometimes you can use it to help people get used to the technology. Sometimes it can be used to actually help them get closer to the desired outcome. If you make an icebreaker that's really fitting to what the purpose is, then people might be a little bit more apt to do it because they think, okay, this is relevant. Good. Love seeing all these tools in here. Thank you, Mary, for putting Pathspace in the meeting chat. Also want to remind everyone that if you don't save the chat, don't worry. I'm going to format it and send it back to you so that you have that. So you see another way of just another feature that we can do is Tech Host formatting the chat. Yes, Hope, you had a question, something you wanted to add?
Right. Sometimes also not having a designated icebreaker, but just having easy conversation as people come in, just very engaging and friendly conversation as people come in, breaks the
Yes.
ice. Yes.
That's right. I love that. It's sort of a guerrilla style of an
Right.
icebreaker. That's
Yeah.
good. And I know as a tech host, thank you for adding that. As a tech host, sometimes what I do is if I'm working with a really big group and I know that there are some folks that are not very tech savvy. I think we were in a session last week, Mary, where you had some open breakout rooms that people could join manually. And I said, for those of you who are arriving early and your tech is great, you feel really comfortable with it, go join a breakout room and visit with some other folks while I help people with the tech. And it was great. I mean, not everybody did it, but I have put some people into those breakout rooms, and then I close the rooms and bring them back right before we begin. And so it's another great way to get people talking to each other and connecting while I'm helping people with their tech. So great. These are all wonderful. Ask people if they have questions throughout the session. That's right. I mean, it's wonderful to be able to raise your hand, but when we make space, then we allow people to take space as well. Good. Efficiency using spinning wheel app to select speaking order. Is that the wheel of names? If you don't mind, Mary, if you could put the link to the wheel of names in there. This is a great spinning wheel app. It's free. You can even add confetti and music and custom graphics or colors. And so the spinning wheel app is really great. I use it for raffles, that kind of thing. I've even used it as a device to say, okay, we're going to do a quick mashup of ideas. And I might put different ideas around the wheel, and then we'll spin it 2 or 3 times and say, okay, take these 3 ideas, mash them up, go. Yep, wheel of names. Thank you so much. Follow foundational good meeting practices, purpose, outcome, time agenda, clear opening, clear roles. Absolutely. Strong close. Agenda with timings, important. Sometimes adding a timer, though, to an agenda, it's great for time boxing if you need to be able to do that. But if you really want to have a divergent conversation and making sure you hear all of the voices, sometimes you don't want to put times on an agenda because people will be looking at their watch and not really paying attention to the conversation. So I think adding timing is got to be a very conscious choice. Flow sheet script for the facilitator and moderator. Absolutely. So thank you for saying that. I didn't pay that person. I don't know who said that. But Mary and I certainly do have a flow sheet that we work on too. Barb, did you have a question? I noticed you were unmuted. No. Okay. Well, you're unmuted. So a lot of times as a facilitator, if I see someone unmuted, I'm like, oh, maybe they're ready to ask a question. And I don't mind being interrupted. So again, feel free to put your questions in the chat or unmute or raise your hand. So these are absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Being organized is important, especially being organized for your tech host so the tech host can follow as well. Yeah, creation of various facilitator roles. I think it's really important for people to know what the roles are. Absolutely. Sending instructions, worksheets, and explanations in advance helps things keep very, very efficient. And waiting room video can have information in a video that people see or hear while in the waiting room. I think that's wonderful. I offer so many different sessions that I really don't do that. But if I have a session that I know needs that beforehand, you can certainly customize those waiting room settings in Zoom. Yeah. Excellent. Always being able to use different types features is great. Yeah, adding instructions. Yeah. Adding instructions to the chat before you send out people to breakout rooms is really important. Yeah, making sure we have confirmation. Excellent. Yep. So if you remember, for those of you that showed up earlier a little bit on time, I had a slide up and I was asking you questions that keeps people engaged and keeps them gets them ready. Yeah, rehearse the flow ahead of time. Very important. So keeping things equitable. Sometimes some of the things we do to help people engage and be efficient can also be equitable, but there's also some very specific things that folks need in order to have an equal voice in the room. So creating various ways for participants to give feedback. I think this is really important, especially because some people like to talk over each other. So sometimes the chat can be a great place for someone to be adding something while other people are talking. There's only one person in the room, or one person speaking in the room, like I am now because I'm presenting. But being able to have those breakout rooms and giving feedback post session is really key. Yeah, people are using different devices which work differently. So for those of you that were here at the beginning of the call when I was having you use the annotation tool, one of the things that I said was if you're on a device or can't find the annotation tool, put it in the chat. And if you happen to be driving or really can't use the chat, which I didn't say this, but you can add it, is go ahead and unmute and let us know where you are, and we can put it in the chat or put it annotate for you. Yeah, having voting is really important. So Mary had shared that link, pathspace.com. That's a great way to do voting, and it can be anonymous. And if you don't want to use a third-party tool, you can use your chat to do some voting. And the way to make that anonymous would be for everyone to change their name to anonymous, and then have everybody vote. So that way you would see all this anonymous showing up in the chat storm, but then you would see where people are voting. And that's just if you wanted to do a low tech way. Yeah, make sure the print on any slide is a good size, and maximizing that window is important too. Like to be able to ask folks when I'm sharing a slide, can you read everything? Yeah, using online whiteboard, Mural and Miro. So for those of you who might be dialing in late, we did share a Mural quick guide, and I will add that to the follow-up. It'll actually be in the chat, so you'll have that access to that. Mural and Miro are excellent tools, and they're also excellent for being able to work asynchronously. So you can give it ahead of time or have people follow up and continue to use that. So these are great. Polls, individual, anonymous, writing, voting on sticky notes or a whiteboard, excellent. Reactions, very good. Sometimes I don't always see them. That's not where I'm at, but that's something that you should add or could add to the beginning of the session to show as part of your etiquette and setting the tone is I'd love for you to use reactions today because we want to really get a pulse of what's happening in the room. And ask participants to indicate in chat if they're ready to move on. Everyone enters something in the chat at the same time. Yeah, these are excellent. So I would invite you to continue to come back to this Padlet and keep sharing if you'd like. And you can add more resources and comments in the Padlet. It's all up to you, and feel free to share it with others as well, because I believe that we can all gain by creating online environments where we can all thrive. So let's now assess and measure our tech hosting aptitude. If you're a facilitator, trainer, or presenter, you can increase your tech hosting skills to help sessions run smoothly and add value to your offerings. Knowing what's possible in an online session, you can hire a tech host so that you can focus on what's most important, facilitating the session to meet the desired outcome. The right tech host can serve as a stagehand and put you in the best light. Now, if you're a remote or hybrid worker, meetings can have more meaning for you and others in the session, and you can help make change in subtle ways as a tech host. You can contribute and be seen as a servant leader by leaving things better than you found it. So I believe that the three pillars of tech hosting are approach design, presence, and tech mastery. And so be sure to grab your handout. And Mary, if you don't mind, if you could put that in the chat. Thank you. Oops, looks like we've got another, it's acting funny again. So if you didn't get a chance to download it, no worries. We're gonna put that in the chat again. Great. Thank you so much for adding, Lisa. She loves having tech hosts. However, it's sometimes challenging to convince a client to pay for the additional support. Yes, absolutely. And so what I like to say in that instance is taking it back to the desired outcomes. Considering what it is we want to achieve in this session and the technology that we're going to be using, I'm going to need to hire a tech host. And if you have a hard time doing that, sometimes what I do is I just put it as the line item budget. I just put it under the facilitation, and it might be just part of my cost that I just add it to mine and then bring someone in. But I completely understand. So yeah, let's walk through this handout. So I'm curious how you feel your tech hosting aptitude is. So I'd love for you to take a moment to reflect on each one of these pillars and rate yourself from low to high aptitude in the following areas: approach design, presence, and tech mastery. So when it comes to approach design, do you understand how online meetings work and workshops work? Then that's kind of a baseline, right? But do you love designing online sessions and have a methodology that really works? Like, do you feel like you've got the approach down? And that could be designing exercises, knowing when to put in those energizers, when to play with that energy in the room to help people get engaged, and the different ways of keeping things efficient by including third-party tools. So just go ahead and mark up on there, or if you don't have this handout, you can open it up on your computer and look at it. Would you say you're high, medium, or low? And then when it comes to presence, when you're in the room as a tech host, do people know what you're doing by what you say and do? That's great. If you have a presence and you're very clear about what you're doing, that's okay. But that's sort of the baseline. Or is your presence felt? Meaning, can you show up in such a way that you have absolute nonverbal communication, but they still trust you and they know that you're there to support them? That might be ways of them showing, tech host showing support in the chat, setting up that tone and etiquette at the very beginning, but then being silent. But most importantly, it's something that we study is studying apperception and keeping equanimity when things get kind of sticky, right? So that your presence is such that if something goes wrong in the meeting, not all the eyes go to the tech host and go, that person's not handling it very well. You get flustered when there's tech issues. And then that kind of leads us to tech mastery, which, are you pretty good with computers and you can Google real fast? I have someone who says, to be a tech host, you just have to Google things really quickly and find the answer. Well, that's not necessarily true. Again, I'd call that the baseline. But really, to have that tech mastery is that you have the experience of fixing things. And it does go back to that patience and grace, sort of that presence, but it's that you can do it pretty much flawlessly and be okay with it if things do go wrong. All right. So as you're thinking about those high, mediums, and lows, I'm going to launch a quick poll just so that we can see how folks feel in the room. This is totally anonymous. Approach design, presence, or tech mastery results. So it looks like people feel pretty good to high, so middle to high on the approach design. That tells me that there's a lot of facilitators in this room and they really do know how to design meetings. So that's great. Presence, again, middle and high. So wonderful that people feel really good about their presence. Again, that tells a lot about the presence and you as facilitators. And it doesn't surprise me that we have a few folks that are low, a lot in the middle, and a few that are high. This actually really kind of follows a bell curve, doesn't it? That a majority of the people are going to be in the middle and we're going to have a little bit on the high and low. That's just totally normal, especially when it comes to tech, because it's always changing, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing where you are in terms of your aptitude when it comes to tech hosting. So by now, you probably know that I love a good Venn diagram. So sit back and relax. The following slides are super packed with text. So I invite you to reflect on your self-assessment as I talk. You don't have to read through this. I'll be reading it for you. But what I want you to do is notice what ideas you have about increasing your own tech hosting aptitude. And I'm going to be talking about where those areas, presence and approach and tech mastery, where those come together. Okay. So let's just focus on those intersections. To improve your approach design and presence, I want you to focus on your strengths, what skills you bring, and your brand. What tools do you need in order to pull this off? Do you need to make an intake form? How would you customize the questions to your client in your discovery meeting? And how would you craft your emails to infuse your style and voice? Now, when it comes to presence and tech mastery, to improve that, keep doing the inner work to increase your emotional intelligence. Are you calm and not nervous and feel prepared for an upcoming session? Do you have a centering ritual that is part of your checklist before you enter the room or let others in? And can you conduct a quick tech check with your client or presenter just before the meeting that comforts them and eases any worries that they have? And then finally, to improve your tech mastery and approach design, customize and tidy up your organizing structures. Review your client's requirements and do the research if you need to help them reach their desired outcome. And prior to the session, can you recommend the appropriate tech to support, complement, and enhance the design of the meeting, online or hybrid? While in the session, can you follow the presenter or facilitator even if they go off agenda and be ready to help hold the process of when they come back to it? So, if you're reflecting on these three pillars of tech hosting, and thank you so much, Mary, for putting in the chat, where are your strengths? What would you like to learn more about or develop in yourself? And what can I do to support you? So, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to take some notes. In fact, I'll give you 3 minutes to just answer these three questions for yourself. Where are your strengths when it comes to the three pillars? What would you like to learn more about or develop within yourself? And what can I do to support you? We're about 1 minute and 30 in. So I want you to be thinking about how I can support you and also what questions you have to meet your learning expectations about tech hosting. So you may take your time to do this as well. So we have time. We're just about ready to wrap this up, but just want to give some time for Q&A. Excellent. Well, thank you for taking that time to reflect. Hopefully you've learned a couple of things today. I'd like to share a few final thoughts and then open it up to Q&A. So would love to for you to put those in the chat, and you'll be able to unmute in just a few minutes to ask me questions. So just a few final thoughts about my philosophy on tech hosting. And while it's very service minded and may seem a bit altruistic, I want to remind you that you have so much to gain from keeping up on your tech hosting skills, and others gain too. And so why do I use appreciative inquiry as an approach? It's a comprehensive way of planning all the way from the beginning to delivery. And holding the principles of appreciative inquiry as a tech host help you maintain a presence of equanimity. And while tech is important and the approach you take is important, the presence is just as important to maintain the client relationship as it is in the room, both with that client, but also when things break, right? So just want to let you know before I open it up to Q&A, I wanted to share a few live sessions that are coming up in the next month. My good friend, Avril Orloff, she is an applied improv facilitator, will be sharing how we as tech hosts can leverage the principles of improv in our work. And I'll be giving a lesson on how to gain resilience and maintain equanimity while tech hosting. So be sure to check out your inbox as I follow up with an email with more resources about how you can incorporate tech hosting into your work. So love to now open this up to some Q&A. Also feel free in the chat. I can tell by how many facilitators we have in the room and by the poll, we have a lot of really, really strong, experienced people here. You probably know a lot already because you have been doing tech hosting. So I'll answer what we have in the chat. Aisha's saying, how do we get a sense of which similar collaboration tools, such as whiteboards, to choose? I love this question because let's see if it has to do with the next question. How do we learn to match the available tech to elements of the approach design, such as specific activity? Exactly. So we're going to match the technology to the activity, but we also need to be keeping in mind what is that desired outcome and what's the tech savviness of the group. And so this is an excellent question. It's something that we talk a lot about in Tech Host Academy is what tools do we use for different things? And I think again, it depends on that tech savviness and that desired outcome. But what might be some examples? People feel free to unmute and I'll give one. Is that if we're working on a working document that's going to be around for a long time, we want to be able to work both in the meeting and asynchronously. two apps come to mind right away. If you're super tech savvy, I'd go with Mural. But if the group is not tech savvy, I'd go with a Google Doc, just a shared Google Drive works for me. And that's if you wanted to have a working document all the time. If you want to do polling or if you want to be able to come to consensus quickly after a brainstorming session, Pathspace is excellent for that. Now it's sort of like it's like a one-trick pony. It does one thing, but it does it so efficiently that it would be great to do it and then have some discussion around it and go back and use it again. So I love Pathspace for that. So Aisha, does that help answer the question, or would you like to expand or have something specific that you'd like to share? Great. Super. And Hope, you're asking if you have a long break, I fall off a bit in mastery. I may forget little insights that have gained. Does anyone else have that experience? Can you say more about that, Hope, if you have a long break? Oh, a long break from tech hosting or facilitating?
Right, a long break between sessions doing
Yeah.
sometimes you're extremely busy, and so you find that your skills get really high, from doing it over and over again. And then sometimes you have a break, and when you come back, it's like ABC.
It is, isn't it? And sometimes technology changes too. I know that when I've been teaching online for close to 7 years and facilitating online. And then when I decided to open Tech Host Academy, I had to stop and make a class. And it took me about 6 months to build this whole thing out. And as I was doing that, technology kept changing. And I was taking on some tech jobs here, tech hosting jobs here and there, and facilitating here and there, but I wasn't on my game all the time. And right before I launched, I had this feeling of, oh my gosh, am I already a dinosaur? Is this even relevant anymore? Everybody's already
Right.
doing it. Do they even need this?
Right.
But the reality is we're dipping our toe back in that water of that river that we've been in before. So I see, Paul, you waved. Do you have something you could add there?
Yeah, I think it's maybe just like I've been with Zoom for quite a few years, and it's unbelievable. Just in that one platform, all the different things, and how do you keep up? And I think you talked about this, but I find well, I do my updates every 2 weeks, and I make sure I got the latest. But certainly what I do is I go on by myself. I open up the platform. I click around. I basically ground myself. And you've already talked about that. So if I've been away from it for a while, I go in, oh, look at the buttons on reactions. There's a new poll feature. Or I got to check my video. I got to check my audio because I've got a new computer. So, or you have a meeting with a friend, a trusted friend, and say, let's practice this and that. And then you're probably feeling pretty good. And then you go see your client.
That's right. That's right. And here's the thing is we only need to know this much more than everyone else in the room. There's that. And we just have to be that much faster and on top of it. Now that can feel a little daunting or scary, or that's where that presence comes in. And I love what you said about calling a friend. So at Tech Host Academy, we have sandbox sessions. We have live Q&A sessions every month where we can sandbox, but we have specific sandboxing sessions. And in the next year, I'm going to open this up to anybody who wants to come in and try those things out, because it doesn't have to be a closed thing that we're doing here. And in those sandbox sessions, we went 2 hours yesterday, which was probably too long for technology because I like to keep it to an hour. I see Mary laughing because it was like, how full was your brain after an hour? Yeah, well, 2 hours, but we did record it. And in that session, we talked about probably 50 different things that we could do in a session to be more efficient as a tech host, to make sure that those meetings were more efficient and equitable and engaging. Yeah, excellent. I love what, and I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, Taruna, what you're saying about Zoom has the added ability to have filters, that sort of a basic version of Instagram. It's awesome for engagement. And so, yeah, let's, if we all want to play with those, if you hit that little up arrow next to stop video and click video settings, and then go down to, let's see, background and effects, and then video filters, you can do all sorts of crazy things. You can put in frames, you can wear cool glasses, you can decide to be, I don't know, animals if you want. And these are a lot of fun. They can be anyway. And for those who really want to play along, I think there's even a whole section on virtual makeup. Now, I have seen it go bad. I just want to let you know, I've seen lips move where the lipstick is doing something different than the lips are moving. And sometimes even eyebrows move when you don't want it to. And I love the one that Paul's using right now. If he opens his mouth, you'll see as if he's talking, it'll even open the mouth. There we go. He can talk and it'll look like an animal is talking. So those can be really fun. And those can be great energizers and icebreakers too. So yeah, so it may not work on an old laptop. So that reminds me, I didn't put it in the email coming out here because, or for this session, because I knew we were going to do some very basic things. I didn't know this was going to come up, but I always remind people to update the latest version of Zoom. And you might think, well, I already have it automatically updated on my computer. But the reality is sometimes Zoom will put out manual updates. And that's another thing. If you find out there's a new update, you can click and see what's been, what's the newest thing that they've improved. And so to Paul's point that when he talked about, poking around and seeing what's new, just see what the updates are saying and go see if that's going to help you with your next session. I also want to recognize we're almost at the top of the hour. And if you need to drop off, that's totally fine. Great. Yes, so I'm not going to share the recording that was led yesterday because it was really a hands-on thing. It was more of a reminder for folks that are in my course, but I'm happy to share information about the course and then some upcoming sessions that are open to the public. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for saying, and thank you, Mary, for putting, that's just my website, Tech Host Academy. And thank you everyone for being here. I love to always end the call with some shaky jazz hands. So if you want to, in the upper right-hand corner, click the view button and go to gallery. We can all see each other. And I do just a yay. It's just a silent way of clapping. Some people say round of applause. Some people wave. I'd love to see how you like to end your session. So thank you, Mary, for being here. So the big round of applause for Mary too. Yay.
Thank you. It's always wonderful to learn from such a great community.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. So thank you everyone for joining me. I will follow up with an email and would love to hear more about how I can support you in your upcoming online sessions as a tech host. All right. Thank you, everyone.